Achatina fulica is a species of large land snail that belongs in the family Achatinidae. It is also known as the giant African land snail. It shares the common name, giant African snail, with other species of snails such as Achatina and Achatina marginata. This snail species has been considered a significant cause in pest issues around the world. Internationally, it is the most frequently occurring invasive species of snail. Outside of its native range, this snail thrives in many types of habitat in areas with mild climates. It feeds voraciously and is a vector for plant pathogens, causing severe damage to agricultural crops and native plants. It competes with native snail taxa, is a nuisance pest of urban areas, and spreads human disease. This snail is listed as one of the top 100 invasive species in the world. Distribution. The species is native to East Africa, but it has been widely introduced to other parts of the world through the pet trade, as a food resource, and by accidental introduction. This species has been found in China since 1931 and its initial point of distribution in China was Xiamen. The snail has also been established in the Pratas Islands, of Taiwan, throughout India, the Pacific, Indian Ocean Islands, Southeast Asia and the West Indies. The species was established in the United States in 1936. They were brought to the U.S. through imports. They were intended to be used for educational uses and to be pets. Some were also introduced because they were accidentally shipped with other cargo. Eradication is currently underway in Florida. The species has recently been observed in Bhutan, Yelpashing, Mongar, where it is an invasive species. It has begun to attack agricultural fields and flower gardens. It is believed though that dogs have died as a result of consuming the snail and being infected by the rat lungworm Angiostrongylus cantonensis. Starting in 2010, individuals of the species have been found in the humid, subtropical Argentine Mesopotamia. The National Agricultural Health Service has established an ongoing project to detect, study, and prevent the expansion of this pest. Description. The adult snail is around 7 cm (2.8 in) height and 20 cm (7.9 in) or more in length. The shell has a conical shape, being about twice as high as it is broad. Either clockwise, dextral, or counter-clockwise, sinistral directions can be observed in the coiling of the shell, although the dextral cone is the more common. Shell coloration is highly variable, and dependent on diet. Typically, brown is the predominant color and the shell is banded. The shell is particularly tough and has the highest heavy metal content of any snail species. Ecology. Habitat. The giant African snail is native to East Africa, and can be traced back to Kenya and Tanzania. It is a highly invasive species, and colonies can be formed from a single gravid individual. In many places, release into the wild is illegal. Nonetheless, the species has established itself in some temperate climates and its habitat now includes most regions of the humid tropics, including many Pacific islands, southern and eastern Asia, and the Caribbean. The giant snail can now be found in agricultural areas, coastland, natural forest, planted forests, riparian zones, scrub and shrublands, urban areas, and wetlands. The giant African snail is a macrophytophagous herbivore. It eats a wide range of plant material, fruit, and vegetables, paper, and cardboard. It sometimes eats sand, very small stones, bones from carcasses, and even concrete as calcium sources for its shell. In rare instances, the snails consume each other. In captivity, this species can be fed on a wide range of fruit and vegetables, plain unseasoned mince, or boiled egg. They can also occasionally be fed cuttlefish bone, which is commonly used as a calcium source for healthy shell growth. They require about 18.28% of crude protein in their diet for optimal growth. Life cycle. This species is a simultaneous hermaphrodite. Each individual has both testes and ovaries and is capable of producing both sperm and ova. Instances of self-fertilization are rare, occurring only in small populations. Although both snails in a mating pair can simultaneously transfer gametes to each other by lateral mating, this is dependent on the size difference between the partners. Snails of similar size can reproduce in this way. Two snails of differing sizes mate unilaterally, one way, with the larger individual acting as a female due to the comparative resource investment associated with the different sexes. Like other land snails, these have intriguing mating behavior, including petting their heads and front parts against each other. Courtship can last up to half an hour, and the actual transfer of gametes can last for 2 hours. Transferred sperm can be stored within the body up to 2 years. The number of eggs per clutch averages around 200. A snail may lay 5 to 6 clutches per year with a hatching viability around 90%. Adult size is reached in about 6 months, after which growth slows, but does not cease until death. Life expectancy is commonly 5 to 6 years in captivity, but the snails can live for up to 10 years. They are active at night and spend the day buried underground. The giant African snail is capable of estivating up to 3 years in times of extreme drought, sealing itself into its shell by secretion of a calcareous compound that dries on contact with the air. As an invasive species, in many places, this snail is a pest of agriculture and households, with the ability to transmit both human and plant pathogens. Suggested preventive measures include strict quarantine to prevent introduction and further spread. This snail has been given top national quarantine significance in the United States. In the past, quarantine officials have been able to successfully intercept and eradicate incipient invasions on the mainland USA. They are also known to damage buildings by eating stucco and similar materials for the calcium. In the wild, this species often harbors the parasitic nematode Angiostrongylis cantonensis, which can cause a very serious meningitis in humans. Human cases of this meningitis usually result from a person having eaten the raw or undercooked snail, but even handling live wild snails of this species can infect a person with the nematode, thus causing a life-threatening infection. In some regions, an effort has been made to promote use of the giant African snail as a food resource to reduce its populations. However, promoting a pest in this way is a controversial measure, because it may encourage the further deliberate spread of the snails. One particularly catastrophic attempt to biologically control this species occurred on South Pacific Islands. Colonies of A. fulica were introduced as a food reserve for the American military during World War II and they escaped. A carnivorous species, Florida rosy wolf snail, Euglandina rosea, was later introduced by the United States government, in an attempt to control A. fulica, but the rosy wolf snail instead heavily preyed upon the native Partula snails, causing the extinction of most Partula species within a decade. Human use. Individual being kept as a pet. These snails are used by some practitioners of candomblé for religious purposes in Brazil as an offering to the deity Oxala. The snail's substitute for a closely related species, the African giant snail, Achatina marginata, normally offered in Nigeria. The two species share a common name, Igban, also known as Ibi or Boi de Oxala in Brazil, and are similar enough in appearance to satisfy religious authorities. They are also edible if cooked properly. In Taiwan, this species is used in the dish, hot frying snails, which is a delicacy among the traditional drinking snacks. L. fulica also constitutes the predominant land snail found in Chinese markets, and larger African species have potential as small, efficient livestock. The snails have also become increasingly popular as pets in countries including France and the UK, where various companies have sold the animal both as a pet and an education aid. L. fulica is one of the most common snails being sold in the pet trade. The heparinoid acarin sulfate